Welcome back to the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm Brett Coleman. That's EJ Snyder, my wonderful friend and co-host. We're going to QB school today. JT O'Sullivan. We do it every single year. He comes on. We talk for anywhere from an hour to 2 hours about the quarterback class, the ups, the downs, the everything in between. For this class especially, there's a lot in between. This whole group is just one big gray area. And we're going to try to dive in and parse them out as best we can today with somebody who knows quarterback play better than almost anybody else, especially because he did it at the NFL level for over a decade. So before we get to JT and everything he has to say, EJ, how are you?
Before we get to gestures and everything about the 2025 quarterback class, which is a lot, as you said, I'm good. I'm excited to hear what JT has to say. Again, because of his perspective, we've had some minimal conversations. We've tried to keep it down. We knew this pod was coming. We didn't want to spend stuff that we thought was better left recorded. And to see his insights and see how they are aligned with ours and especially different than ours is one of the best days of the year for me. I really enjoy it because quarterback, I think, is a position that we all strive to study better. And JT helps me do that and hopefully helps all of you do that. And that's why we have him on. And that's why it's one of our best episodes of the year.
Quick reminder, if you want to draft any of these quarterbacks or really any rookies at all, they're all available to draft on Underdog Fantasy right now. You can draft for 2025 fantasy leagues right now. I know it seems early, but again, if you're somebody who follows the draft like us and you want to take advantage of this time period to get the best possible values on rookies that you've studied, that the general public has not studied yet, now is the time to do it. So again, rookies are available to draft on Underdog Fantasy right now, including all the quarterbacks we talk about today. Or if you don't want to do fantasy league drafts and you want to do NBA pick'ems or baseball or basically every other sport that's happening between now and the one that we care about the most in August, which is the NFL, you can also do those pick'ems on Underdog Fantasy. So check that out at the link in the description below or at the QR code on the screen. Use promo code BOOTLEG, by the way, when you do it. You get up to $1,000 in deposit bonuses as well. And there's new customer free picks literally every single day this time of year because it's NBA season. So again, check that out at the link in the description, QR code on the screen. And with that, EJ, let's get to JT. The great JT O'Sullivan, QB school himself, joining us for another draft season here on Bootleg Football. JT, how are you?
Fellas, what's up? Feels like that time of year. Getting excited. We're getting close.
Overall, big picture. I know this quarterback class is not like last year's quarterback class. Would you consider it a bad year to need a quarterback in the draft? Are you more middle of the road? Do you see very many, if any, like actual high quality starters in this class? Like, just before we dive into these guys individually, taking your temperature on how you feel about the class.
Right out the gate, just take a dump on all of them, huh? I guess I've kind of gone full circle, if that makes sense. I think it was fair to be a little down going into kind of the process of watching the film and starting with certain guys. I certainly got confused on I do a pretty good job of staying out of the lane of hearing a lot of stuff, but diving into details on really Sanders more than anybody else, I just got confused about why he was projected so high. And that kind of took me down a side rabbit hole that I've never really gone down before in a draft season. But beyond that, I do think it's hard to look at this class and be fired up and say, oh yeah, there are, 3 projected, starters, or, we've got multiple guys that potentially could be Hall of Fame type guys or be even like AFC unicorn type guys. There just aren't multiple of those guys. I think you could make the argument, you could talk yourself into Cam Ward on certain levels, but even that, he's going to be bumping up against historically a lot of issues. And so it's one of those things where you turn on the film, you try to be realistic. I try to be as objective as possible of just looking at the film. And it's tough to see a lot of Sunday consistent throws, performance, things that translate. And it is. And I can feel it even like bleeding into how excited I am to watch some of these guys or not watch some of these guys. And it's tough to just kind of put your head down and be as honest as you can be, but also fair and just describing what's on the film.
Yeah, I think that's a process that we've been through as like you said, it's hard to stay out of that during the season. I try not to watch a lot of college ball because at the time it's happening, because narrative, because announcers, because lots of things get said and sort of put up as facts that aren't. And I think for me, it's easier to do that after the season when the film is in the can, take a look at it again, free of most of that stuff. But once you dive in and start having conversations about these guys, yeah, I think there were definitely some surprises that went against those sort of larger narratives, because you do hear them. You try not to let them affect you, but it's like, wait, I thought everybody said this guy was great, or I thought everybody said this guy was terrible. And it turns out not to be that way. And that's, I think, why I like doing it that way, is because you can have those discoveries, right? You don't have to go against a big sort of monolithic idea of who they are, what they can do or what they can't do. You can just let the film play out in front of you and say, all right, I see the path here. I see that translates. I see the people like that, but it doesn't translate as much. All of those things can be made off the film. And yeah, I'm with you. It's been a journey for this particular class.
I want to start with Shedeur, who you mentioned. Obviously, he's the natural starting place for a lot of people, but I think it's appropriate because I've struggled with him quite a bit just because of where he plays, the type of offense they play in, who he's throwing to. I feel like he got away with a lot of stuff just because Travis Hunter exists, right? And also the other 3 NFL receivers they have at Colorado. You know, I look at his screen percentage of 22%, which is really high. Like, they had a lot of manufactured completions. But at the same time, like, he's made some legitimately really, really good throws. And so even though I have a day 2 grade on him, like, I acknowledge he's a good player, but it's been tough for me to draw the line between, okay, a lot of manufactured production, got helped out by a guy who has maybe the best ball skills I've ever seen in my life. And also, like, good throws are good throws. And I don't really know how big the gray area there is. Would you have any insight into that?
The gray area is fucking deep and thick, bro. I mean, you're right on. I mean, I think that there are other things that I would add on what I consider the positives when I turn on the Sanders film, and I think he comes across as, and this is kind of the backside of another coin, but he comes across as a very tough, smart player. Like, when we say manufactured completion percentage, I absolutely agree with you and know what you're saying, but he also is very smart with the ball. And he is making good decisions, and the ball comes out pretty quick. And it's one of those things. And then you see, no, he's holding on to it, and he's taking a crazy sack. And it's these kind of crazy opposite extremes that are tough to make sense of. And those sacks certainly seem like something that would be even more of an issue on Sundays. But then you do have to make sense of the film. And I'm glad you alluded to the guys in the perimeter, because they had an amazing 7-on-7 team. Like, those wide receivers are dudes, and you are dealing with a unicorn out there. And they're in 10 personnel, static, open formations, and it just doesn't translate to very much of what you'll see on Sunday. And it's kind of frustrating. And it really was frustrating to watch the film and kind of really, I think I shared every single offensive clip that they ran this year. And it's one of those things where I would have lost my mind, and kind of counterintuitive on many levels, because you have to talk about the daddy ball element of it. And, people default back to, hey, I'm going to bring my Louis, I'm going to bring all that shit. Well, he should have brought the whole Louis catalog. He really ended up only bringing like the Louis handbag. And it was one of those things where you watch the offensive line, and it's hard to play quarterback when they can't pick up a stunt. You watch them not have a tight end in the program. Like, it just doesn't set you up to be successful. And then you heard, I was chuckling early in the draft process, because you could tell immediately the people who hadn't watched the film, because they would say, oh, this is an NFL pro style offense. And it was fucking laughable. I mean, it is laughable. It is the absolute opposite of that. And so it's one of those things. And then you type on, after you talk about the screens, even the drop back stuff is very, how many times can you run Y cross? I mean, it's one of those things where you're just not
apparently
gonna be
10
able,
a game.
you're just not going to be able to do that. And so it's hard. But you also I see a guy who is very polished. I mean, he is as polished as you'll see in the class, as far as fundamentals, even a little old school as far as like the release and kind of those types of things. You can tell has been coached and drilled at a really high level for a really long time. Now, does that impact maybe where you think his potential ceiling could go and in continued improvement? Probably. But I think the things that are the bigger question marks are just you don't see a lot of the wow, not even wow, even like the second level, third level drive throws, whether it's down the field like a dagger, comeback, anything that you're going to have to do at some point in the league, you just don't see it. It doesn't mean he can't do it. It just means that it sure looks like on his film, either they aren't comfortable calling it, doing it, or he's struggling doing it. And so those types of things for me are tough. And I want to make sure I hedge this because people, this is a low hanging fruit to say, oh, he doesn't drive the ball on film. I think when he goes to throw like a fastball, like his fastball, as opposed to a guy like Cam, he's such a more of a traditional over the top guy that he kind of comes up. You can see him kind of everything, his hip, shoulders, eyes, everything kind of comes up, as opposed to a guy like Cam who is so rotational. Like everything can be done in an old school phone booth. It's different type of snap and whip. And I think it's easy to compare those guys because, they train together. They've got the same trainer. You kind of have them talked 1 and 2 all the time. But it's one of those things where if I had to say, hey, what's your biggest concern? Hey, can he make those big time throws when you got to make that big time throw? And there just isn't a lot of evidence on his college film that he can.
Yeah, I would say the evidence is few and far between for those translatable throws. And I got to say, JT, you were in my ear while I was watching him. I was like, Where's the big A anticipation? Where's the anticipation? Because on a lot of the throws, and I think he does have strengths, and I think this is one of the things that's a real challenge to talk about Sanders with any nuance, is if you don't love him, you automatically hate him, and you're a hater, and, that's the kind of dismissive conversation we get into, which, as you know, is not what we do here. We want to break it down and figure out what does translate, what doesn't, where the areas are to work on, because all players have those. And I think he's really good in the short to medium areas in the middle of the field. And I think that's where a lot of young quarterbacks struggle. And that's where the polish you talk about, that's where the eyes, he's a pretty cool customer. When he gets a pocket, he certainly doesn't. His line is almost automatically going to be better as he goes to the next level. His receivers might be not as good, but his line's going to be better. And those are strengths you can work with. But even on the throws where he is making a pretty typical NFL throw, like a little comeback or a hitch, I kept seeing see it, throw it all over his tape. Like the guy finishes the hitch, comes to a stop, and then he throws it and hits him in the chest. You got to throw that a little bit earlier. And again, on crossing routes, it's not really anticipation. It's the guy's already running. I'm just going to throw it to where he's running to. It's not about a break or any kind of timing. And you do see those throws. He does have the ability to do it, but it's like 2 a game. And it's really hard to make a full report off of that and say, oh, yeah, he's got this ability and he can dial it up whenever he needs to. And it's the same as you said about driving the ball. He does occasionally, but it doesn't look as good and he has to do more to do it. And I really think about his tolerances for success in the NFL because everybody's faster. He's not particularly fast. He thinks he's faster than he is, which is tough as he's running away from guys or trying to and not having it happen. So his margins are going to be so much smaller and he's going to have to do everything just a tick faster. And I'm not saying he can't, but I'm saying if you're looking for that on film, you're going to be looking for a while.
Is there a place that he could go in your mind that would be more likely to lead to him being successful in the NFL? Like, is there a situation just with everything we know about him as far as physical limitations, what he does well, what he doesn't do well, or maybe just what he hasn't shown yet? Like for me, I look at New Orleans floating around, and again, I don't have a first round grade on him, but if he's going to go in the first round, which he probably will because he's quarterback, I look at New Orleans and you're like, okay, we're in a dome. Kellen Moore, like if we just want to throw a million hitches a game or call Y cross or mesh or whatever, like Kellen will do that. They have a franchise left tackle. We got Olave as long as he stops taking brutal concussions from Derek Carr hospital balls. Like they have a legit wide receiver 1. They got a legit wide receiver 2. Like we still got Alvin there. Like I look at that environment and I think, okay, between coach, where he's playing, the stuff around him, I think New Orleans could work. A, would you agree with that? And B, is there a different place that you have in your head where you're like, hey, if he goes here, he has a better shot to succeed than say going to the Giants at 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on with the dome idea, with the quarterback friendly system or coach. I mean, I guess I would the opposite. The easier way for me to answer this is to say I would shy away from being excited about him going to somewhere with poor weather and a defensive centric coach that wants to play kind of old school ball. Like, I think he needs to be in a modern situation that allows him to continue to develop, to get the ball out of his hand quickly, to take advantage of all those underneath, over the middle throws that he is comfortable doing right now, and continue to build out. The other thing that I don't love putting young guys in a box saying, hey, he's not going to get stronger, he's not going to get better at throwing it, because I think he certainly can, and there's nothing to say that he won't. But it's one of those things where I just fucking cringe, bro, when I hear comparisons to like Joe Burrow, or like, it's one of those things where, where that dude spins it and he's gotten better as a pro. So maybe if he continues to get better as a pro throwing it, those types of things might be fair. But it's one of those things where just like damn near every quarterback in this draft, it's going to depend on where they go. It's going to depend on the system. It's going to depend on the people around them. And then it's going to depend on their opportunity to go out there and thrive. The other part of it that would be easy to say is, hey, go to some sort of Shanny McVay type system that allows him to make things easier. Like, let's make it as easy as possible, put the training wheels on, and allow you to kind of grow into this thing and give you, a handful of years to kind of come in and find yourself. Because I just, what he put on film at college, to me, is not going to be enough to survive an NFL type situation for a quarterback, to go in there and think you're going to win playoff games on the road in weather like that. It's not enough. So I hope he gets the opportunity to develop somewhere. And again, I'm coming from a guy who loved playing in a dome. It's a hell of a lot easier to throw in the dome. Yeah, let's go. Let's find a dome home and go.
So we know, we don't know where Shedeur is going to go yet. We're very confident of where Cam Ward's going to go, to Tennessee at 1. And so I have a couple thoughts on that. A, I'm okay with it. I'm not super gung-ho about taking Cam Ward first overall, but I like Cam Ward enough that I can at least understand it, justify it, and say okay, he has a shot at being a good NFL starter, which they don't have one right now. So whether he's going at 10 or if he's going at 1, if you're getting a good starting NFL quarterback, yeah, fine, whatever. The price is the price. It is what it is. Would he go number 1 every single year? No, but this year is this year. He's worth it. I'm cool with it. So there's that part of it. The second part of it, which is, some people were comparing him to Will Levis in the sense that some of his turnovers are just batshit insane. Where it's everything's fine for 20 snaps, and then he'll do something crazy, like the pick against Cal, where you're like, Cam, what are we doing, right? And it's one or two a game where that'll happen, just like Will Levis. But I think the difference between him and Will Levis is Cam is good enough to then dig himself out of that hole, which he repeatedly did this season. They were often down in the second half at Miami, but Cam Ward was so good that he would make up that deficit and they would go win the game, other than obviously against Syracuse. And so I understand the trauma that Titans fans have gone through of just watching the dumbest turnovers you've ever seen. But I do think that this is a whole different category of quarterback where he can at least get you out of that, which to me makes him worth going first overall, even if he's not typically the grade of quarterback that you see go that high.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he's significantly better than Will Levis.
I do too. I'm just more talking about the turnovers.
Yeah,
where
the
you're
turnovers.
What are we doing here?
For sure. There are some plays, and I guess I classify it with Cam Ward as more hero ball-ish plays that you just don't need to do on Sundays. Really, you can't do, because every game is so tight, and you're not going to be able to have 25-point comebacks, on the road very often. And so it's one of those things where I think the thing that jumps off the film for me with Cam Ward is he just has significantly better arm talent than anyone else in this draft. I mean, he's making throws down the field, seams, driving the ball, hole shots, deep throws. It's just significantly more impressive than anyone else's film. And then you couple that with the arm angle stuff, that his ability to play the RPO world. He might be one of the best RPO slant guys I've ever seen. I mean, he's turning two every single time. It's smooth. He's got that middle infielder point guard vibe as far as just being able to distribute it wherever he wants. There will be interesting things for me. My biggest thing with him, besides for the like head scratchers, which I think are easier to get rid of than maybe some of the other issues, is I think he'll eventually have to be more on time. What I mean by that is, obviously depending on where you go, you're going to have to be a little bit more on time as an NFL player than sometimes it looked like he was so comfortable. I feel like he's played so much ball that he's just standing back there, almost like a very chill, like, whether you'd classify it in a good way as smooth and fluid, you'd classify it in a negative way by saying like almost nonchalant and kind of jog sometimes and stuff like that. That shit's just not going to fly in the league. And so being able to be more on time, to instead of turning to hero ball time, to just throw the fucking check down, dog. Like, take 2 hitches, not there, check down. And part of that is that Miami offense, those checkdowns sometimes weren't getting out, where they will be getting out on time in the league, you would hope. But it's one of those things where he was a very, very good college football player. Like, he really was. Everywhere he went, he was extremely productive in kind of the same way, with that same kind of creative, extend, make big wow plays, gunslinger vibe. And so you don't want to get rid of that, but you just want to polish it to make it more consistent on a Sunday basis. But when you look at the arm talent, I mean, once you get past the idea that occasionally he'll drop it down to borderline sidearm when he doesn't have to, I think if he's consistent with his release point, and the other thing I think, if not that I'm catching a lot of UIW film, but like his stroke has gotten tighter and got rid of some wasted movement where now he's much more consistent. But you see him drop down a little bit sometimes and the ball will spray or sink on him. But man, beyond that and beyond being able to play on time more, he's a dynamic playmaker that's going to be fun as hell for the Tennessee fans to watch, kind of create those big explosive plays when things break down and he's got to extend.
I think that dynamism is what makes him worthy of the top overall pick in my mind. I agree with what both of you said in terms of he does turn it loose sometimes, and you're like, just don't do that and we'll be okay. But he's a great athlete. We talked about average athleticism prior to this, and he is a great athlete. Part of the reason he can be so bouncy, nonchalant, relaxed back there is he can outrun the guys that are coming after him. He can out-juke the guys that are coming after him, often does, to extend those plays. And then there's that arm. I just wrote easy, high-octane gas from his arm, because you watch multiple throws on tape. It's not just one. We talked about limited examples earlier on. There are unlimited examples if you go back through his film of him just turning it on, and that is an NFL arm all day long. In fact, a top-ranked NFL arm. He's got that kind of gas. And those things are going to make his margins for success bigger, because we know young passers are going to get squeezed and have to get out of the pocket and create on the move. And if they can't, again, their window is going to be smaller. Cam's is going to be bigger because he has the legs, he has the arm, and he does have a ton of experience. It's a great point, JT, that he has played a lot of ball. He has thrown in a bunch of different offenses, and he's made it work in all of them. And yeah, I agree with you that you can tone those things down a little bit more and just say, look, because you can do all this other stuff, you don't need to do this and this, these 2 plays a game that you do see. But I go back to like the first quarter of Louisville. It's like 5 minutes left in the first quarter of Louisville. And he runs around for like 5 seconds. Everybody's pretty much like, dude, just do something. Nails a guy in the corner of the end zone, 39 yards down the field on a line. And everybody just kind of looks at him like, what? And that's the thing about Cam Ward, is that arm makes it so every blade of grass is in play for as long as he's running around. Sometimes that's 3.5 seconds. Sometimes that's 5.5 seconds. If you lose coverage, he's going to hit him. It doesn't matter where they are. And that gives him a lot of margin for error to learn into it. So I'm cool with the Titans if they want to take the chance at one.
The reason why I'm a fan of him is he works the intermediate depth of the field better than most I mean, even counting last year's quarterback class. And I think there's a lot of college quarterbacks where I don't want to say they stick to the safer throws because they will throw it deep a lot. But in a lot of ways, I mean, JT, you know this, like a go ball down the sideline to the boundary side it's a pretty safe throw. Like it's hard to get picked off on that unless you get kind of like a weird tip situation and the safety comes over and he catches it. But it's one-on-one down the boundary. Either my guy gets it or he doesn't. And there are some quarterbacks in this class that thrive, working screens and go balls because it's not going to get turned over that much, like, say, Shedeur, like we said. Whereas they avoid working between the 10 and 20-yard depth because there's more bodies there and it's more dangerous and the windows are tight, whether, it's outside the numbers or inside the numbers. And I think the mark of a good NFL quarterback is being able to work in that area where there is more traffic and there is more threats. And Cam Ward is very, very good at doing that. And so, again, I have my issues with him as far as the turnovers and as far as, I think when people call it lazy footwork, I don't think that's the right word. I like yours better, like nonchalant. It's almost like an overconfidence of like, yeah, I can get loosey-goosey and still throw this dot. But it's the fact that he's so good at working in the most dangerous part of the field, which in my view is between 10 and 20 yards inside the numbers. Like that's what translates. And it's kind of hard to find that at the college level right now.
No, I think you're right on. I think the other thing that I forgot to mention was, of the guys I can recall off the top of my head, there weren't other players that had multiple kind of backside in throws. I think of that as a very like Matt Stafford type thing where he can just do that shit in his sleep. Where Cam Ward, there are multiple reps. I think off the top of my head, I'm thinking like Florida State and Duke, where he's looking to the front side, whatever's to the front side, not there, perfectly flips his base, throws it right on time, right down the hash, working that middle of the field. And it's just like one of those things where like, yeah, that's third down in the league. Now, it might be more covered than whatever the hell he was throwing it against, but the throw is the same. And those types of things to me really do translate. The other part that I think I don't know why this year I felt more inclined to be descriptive of the offenses that these guys were working in. I think it was because I got so fucking pissed at Colorado and just what they were doing that it made other ones kind of just more aware of. And I just really liked what Miami was doing. Like I felt like they really leaned into Cam Ward's strengths. Like he is a really, really good RPO player. Like the screens are accurate. They're right on him. The slants are outstanding. They had third level glances that they were working. They also moved the pocket a lot and to take advantage of his arm strength. They did a bunch of what like old school football would call like dash, where he kind of intentionally rolls out and throws double moves down the field. And he did a little bit of like under center. It was refreshing, man, to watch it compared to, because I'm sure we'll talk about some of these other offenses that have really good schemers and good offensive architects, but it's much more college-y. This to me almost felt like an all-star game. Like we could just go out there, rip slants, move the pocket a little bit, rip it down the field, like a very transfer-centric offense that is kind of you need to have nowadays for him to be able to walk in and kind of showcase what he did and does at a really high level.
If you were going to drop him into last year's class, because I know a lot of people love context when comparing last year to this year, where would he end up for you? If I recall correctly, you were like pretty even on Caleb and Jaden as far as your 1 and 2. I can't remember. I know you were a little bit lower on Drake, but you still had a pretty good grade on him. But like, where would Cam Ward be in last year's class?
I would probably have had him above Drake May, just because off the top of my head, I think of the group of us, I think I disliked May more than y'all. But I just remember him having weird misses that I couldn't make sense of, and it feels like that's kind of gone away in the little bit we saw in the league. But I don't see any of that on Cam Ward's film. Like those types of things to me, I get nervous about for a bunch of different reasons. But I would probably put him right in that kind of 3B area. I don't even remember what my order was, but I definitely was high on Caleb and Jaden.
Yeah, I think you liked Penix a lot just because he throws it so well. How could you not? And then I can't remember what we said about JJ McCarthy, but in the 2 quarters we got to see of JJ in the preseason, that looked pretty good. So I don't know. I guess time will tell. But if I'm the Titans, I'm very happy that I ended up first overall, because I don't want to call it a cliff after Cam. It's kind of a cliff, EJ. What do you think?
I watched Sanders and Cam in my deep dives back to back, and I did that on purpose. And I didn't watch them first. I tend to sort of start somewhere in the middle and not go for folks that are, typically tagged as top prospects, because that can really set your eye and just kind of make you disappointed with the rest of whatever you see, because you're like, well, this guy doesn't rush the passer as well as Abdul Carter. Well, yeah, nobody does in this class. So you're just going to be disappointed for a couple of weeks. That's not a great way to go for me. So I start in the middle, but it was important to me because of what you said, JT, about them being talked together as, 1 and 2, depending on the order, whatever. And I don't know that there's a bigger gap for me between two players that are talked about so equally than there is between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Like, I would take Cam Ward in a heartbeat because I like all the upside and all the things he's demonstrated on film. And I have less questions, right? I still have questions, absolutely, but less questions by far than I do with Shedeur. I think Shedeur's, again, window is smaller, so situation's even more important. I think Cam Ward's talent's a little bit more scheme agnostic. That arm and those legs, his ability to work different parts of the field that we talked about. I love that you talked about screen accuracy, JT, because it's right there. And it doesn't matter whether he's dropping his arm down, doesn't matter which side he's going to, doesn't matter if he's moving or rolling. He gets the ball to receivers where they can run with it, which really is super helpful for the YAC game. And the other thing that I really liked about Cam is that he learned, right? There was a note that I put down like, hey, he's got to learn to take a little bit of gas off. And you see this with guys with great arms all the time. And he was putting his receivers in spots and putting himself in a spot really where the window was so small because the ball was going so fast. And it was like a long deep slant down the middle. And he threw it so hard and so flat that the receiver had to be in the perfect spot to catch it. And I said, man, he's got to learn to take a little bit off in my notes. 2 quarters later, same game, has a very similar throw. He puts some air under it, gives the guy a chance to run under it. It's a long completion. I'm like, ha, he's figuring it out. And you love to see that guys, with all this gas in their arm, in their legs, whatever, learn how to switch it up, learn how to vary it based on the situation. And watching him do that in real time, I felt great about it. So again, if I was the Titans, I'd be pretty happy, like you said, that I was at 1. If I was looking for a quarterback and I didn't get Cam, I would have to make sure that whoever, and we're going to talk about a lot of these guys, fit my system, and I felt good about hitting the ground running with them, as opposed to saying, well, the things they don't do well are really going to be problems in our system. And I think a lot of teams are going to be up against it this year because they're not going to get top choices. They're going to be down the board. And what's left might not be a great mesh with what they want to do offensively. And that is a tough place to be in the NFL.
And that, I think, is a good jumping off point to get into Jalen Milroe, because he got invited to the draft, which the NFL has made it clear they're only doing that for like 8 to 10 guys that the NFL thinks are going in the first round, because they don't like guys sitting in the green room all night and then come back on day 2. So the NFL knows something. Again, I don't have a first round grade on Jalen Milroe. I also don't run a team, and it only takes one. And I understand why a team would fall in love with him, because the character's off the charts, the physical ability is off the charts. Like, there's a lot to love about Jalen Milroe. It seems like the NFL thinks he's going to be the 3rd quarterback off the board, and it seems like the NFL thinks he's going to go off the board in the first round. A lot of people are kind of tying him to Pittsburgh. And if Aaron goes there, Milroe wouldn't have to start immediately. He'd be the heir apparent, all that kind of stuff. What do you make of this? Like, A, did you ever think Jalen was going to come off the board in the first round? And B, if he does go off the board in the first round, are you okay with it?
I guess I don't think about it like round or whatever. I am a little surprised that they would ask him to do that, if that's kind of their classification about who they invite or who they don't invite. Jalen Milroe was a weird analysis for me. The one thing I want to go back before I fucking forget, and I apologize for jumping back. Cam Ward first. It would be really hard for me to make that decision if I was the Titans, because I don't know how you watch college football and don't love Travis Hunter. That's just me. That's just me. So I'll leave it at that. I hope Cam Ward has a great career. Jalen Milroe, crazy explosive. By far the most dynamic athlete at the position. And so to me, that always gets, old school NFL scouts fired up about being able to, oh, we'll mold him, we'll coach him up, we'll do those types of things. I think you turn on the film and there's a number of throwing concerns, whether it's timing, accuracy, consistency, all those types of things that are going to need to develop and get significantly better for me to be a consistent guy that goes out there. But there's no reason to think he won't get better. I think it's one of those things where you turn on the film and he is a chunk creator. I mean, he is a dynamic athlete, runner. How they used him was interesting. I honestly felt like Alabama, and again, I don't know everybody who came with that new Alabama staff, but watching that film, it was very un-Alabama-like for me. And what I mean by that is there were a number of execution errors. There were weirdo spacing things. It felt like, honestly, that it was a college offense on training wheels. They didn't ask him to do a lot, and it was frustrating for me. It was to be like, run, hey, all right, Jalen, go make a play on third down. Or we're in a tough spot. We need you to make a crazy explosive play in a 2-minute drive. And it's just one of those things where there aren't a lot of transferable throws, dropbacks when you turn on that film over the course of the year. And again, is that because they didn't trust each other? Is that because they're in the first year of a new place? All of those things, I think are concerns for me. But man, if you're talking about just explosiveness, burst, a guy who can go out there and create chunks, he is as good as they get.
Yeah, trying to play that style of ball at the NFL level is going to be very, very difficult because of the lack of consistency. And that's probably the biggest thing that I came away from Milroe's tape with was, everything from a physical standpoint in terms of tools that you would want from a high-level starter are there athletically. He has a big arm when he connects and throws it the right way. I'm glad you talked about rotation earlier because I'm going to talk about it in a minute. But in terms of running, he's one of the most electric runners in this draft. And I don't mean at the quarterback position. I mean in this draft, period. He is incredibly explosive as a runner. We saw that over and over again at Alabama. And sometimes when everything comes together, he is also an explosive thrower. But it doesn't come together all the time as often as you would like. And sometimes, even though it's in there because you've seen him absolutely rip it, he robs himself of velocity because he doesn't get a lot of torque in his rotation and the ball just kind of floats on him. And it's not because I think he was trying to take something off. It looks like a throw that needed to be driven and it just kind of hangs up there for a second. And that kind of inconsistency in the throwing is going to make it very, very difficult to keep the chains moving at an NFL level where the windows are smaller and you get less opportunities in general, and mistakes are magnified. So I don't want him to go to a place where he has to start right away, no matter where it is. And wherever he goes, they got to have a plan for him because we've seen other athletes like this at the quarterback position. And as well as I do, coaches are always like, I can fix him. And they're going to have a chunk of work to do. And if they fix him, the payoff would be immense because, again, he can do everything at a very high level physically. But as a quarterback, from what we saw at Alabama last year to what he's going to need to do in the NFL to be successful on a week-to-week basis is a long road. Like that, I don't want people to think, oh, this is going to be quick or automatic. And like you said, doesn't mean he can't do it. But even if he can do it, it's going to take a while. There's just a lot of ground to cover there.
Yeah, my big issue with Milroe is the accuracy just isn't ready for the NFL. And it's not just about, okay, can you put it within the zip code of your receiver? It's about, can you put it in the exact spot, where the receiver is between the ball and the DB? Like, can you help your guys by throwing with their leverage? Or rather, can you throw it to a spot that helps them create that space late in the route? Are you an assassin on back shoulder fades? Where, if the DB wants to play top down, we can still beat him with a back shoulder ball. If the DB is going to play in trail and we see it early, can we put it up and down and kind of drop it in the bucket where again, the receiver can shield the DB out? And I just don't see the ball placement that helps his receivers produce. I think Ryan Williams did a lot with a little as far as some of those downfield shots. And people always say Jalen Milroe has, one of the best deep balls in this class. And I think there are flashes of him having a really good deep ball, but I think having a good deep ball is more so about placement than it is about velocity or how far you can throw or even just like how pretty the spin looks. And the placement for him was just so spotty that I would have a tough time putting him on the field right now, which is why if he's going to go anywhere in the first round, I hope it's somewhere where he doesn't have to play right now. Because I think, let's say he goes to Pittsburgh, like George Pickens, he has great ball skills, but he can only cover up for so much, right? So, JT, I'll ask you this question. With a young quarterback that struggles with ball placement, even down the field, is that fixable? And in your experience, how long does it take to kind of get that repeatable motion dialed in with the feet, with the core, with your release point, where you can kind of get an actual consistent, repeatable result where the ball goes where you want it to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the example everyone uses or has for the last few years is Josh Allen. And one of those things, and I think you could even lump Lamar in this a little bit now, where you see the improvement as a pro with accuracy and what I like to call like precision ball placement, like very intentional to your point about leverage and about understanding where the ball needs to be to help your guy be open when he's really covered. And those types of things to me would take at least an offseason, because you're really not going to get an offseason this offseason. Like your rookie year is a whirlwind. It's a blur and it takes forever. So you're going to need to go into your first offseason and you're going to be very, try to be very intentional with that. But there's no guarantee that you do it. I think the vast majority of evidence would say that most people can't do that. And that doesn't increase a lot. And, those other guys, when you talk about Josh Allen and Lamar, like you're talking about aliens. Now, Jalen Milroe has some of those alien vibes. And that's why I could talk myself into multiple teams being like, hey, at the end of the first round, if he's still available, like, oh, this is something that we absolutely could develop, work on, and give us one of those creatures that, especially if you're in the AFC, that you feel like, Jesus, if we don't have somebody like this, we don't have a chance. And one of those things where I think it'd be hard. There aren't other guys in this class that have those types of traits or qualities for me. And you're out, and the part that I come back to is just imagine you're the play caller at Alabama. Okay, you've got this guy who we're talking about as an alien, potential freak, explosive, big chunk guy, and we're not throwing the ball. So there's something that we're missing as far as he's struggling to do it in practice. There's trust issues. Something's amiss why we wouldn't lean more into this cat, for me. And so those are the things that I would be most concerned about, being able to say, hey, we got to talk to these guys. And that's where my analysis is always going to be significantly incomplete. Like, what the hell is the real story here? Why are we not doing this? Why are we struggling with this? And you're never going to get that just from the film. All you can do is say, hey, bro, we got to be significantly more consistent with where we're putting the ball if we want to play on Sundays for a long period of time.
I want to get to the other potential first-round quarterback in this draft. That's Jaxson Dart. EJ, have you done your full workup on Dart yet?
Yep, I'm done with the quarterbacks for this year. So I did Dart. Actually, he was one of the guys I did before Sanders and Ward. But yeah, I've been all the way through him. And again, I ended up seeing sort of incidentally a lot of Ole Miss, both tape and actually more live games, probably than almost any other team this fall. I try not to watch those, but occasionally, like, they're on and, you're sitting at a bar having lunch and you're like, oh, that was pretty nice. And, you get that. So, but, I'd watched his receivers, so of course I'd seen him throwing the ball before it. And I came away, he's another guy that you sort of have to clear the slate and say, all right, I'm watching him now. I'm not watching the offensive line, right? I'm not watching the rush. I'm not watching the receivers for the most part. I'm watching what Jaxson Dart does with what he's given. And when I did that, I came away with a pretty different picture than I thought I would get. And again, that's refreshing to me, and it's one of the reasons that I love this work, is because when you really dig into it and focus on a guy, it's oftentimes not what you thought it was on the surface.
JT, where are you at with him? Because I've really struggled with this eval.
Yeah, bro, you got to go offense. Back, bro. We're not letting you off the hook with. It just comes back to what you didn't think. What did you think he was?
I thought he was better with his deep ball for sure. I thought his arm was better. Then
it was better than he was.
No, those two things specifically were the things that I kind of came away going, I really thought this guy was an absolute deep ball ripper. And he's not a bad deep ball thrower. To your point, Brett, it's not all about arm strength necessarily, but he's not as good of a deep ball thrower as I thought he was before I started. That's for sure.
I got you. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
Nah, I'll take it. That's why I read all these notes down, man.
That offense to me has some things that I love. Like, it's one of my favorite college football offenses. I think Lane is a elite a la carte kind of game plan guy. He'll have like a handful of plays that are just big hitters, chunks that you kind of have to say, like, that's not a lot on the quarterback. He's thrown to a wide ass open touchdown, but he also is the guy out there executing it. And the thing that jumped out for me with Jaxson Dart is he's just a better athlete than I thought he was. I didn't know anything about him. He can run it, and he can tote it. Now, is that going to translate to him being like a quarterback run game guy in the league? No, probably not. But can he run it in situationally, like goal line, tight yardage, those types of things? For me, absolutely. Better athlete than I ever would have thought. I think he's a decisive RPO guy. But again, it's hard in that offense, man. In some of these offenses, these guys are so good at dialing up plays, and you can formation fuck people and all the motion and trick dick, all this thing going sideways, and all of a sudden someone pops open, and you're just like, that's an outstanding play call. You and I could go out there and make that throw. And it's one of those things where...
Well, one of us
maybe
at
you
least.
could.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, barely nowadays. But it's one of those things where, then I put like a hard stop on that. But there are also impressive throws. Like, I think he did have some nice second, third level throws that are impressive. And it's one of those things for me, it's hard to pull apart this system. Is he manufacturing these types of chunks, or is this Jaxson Dart ripping it and consistently ripping it? And I think it's hard to make sense of. And I still feel a little like, I don't like to do this to guys, but a little like a tinge from Matt Corral, I kind of had the same vibes where like he kind of had that same, not gunslinger, but like go out there, create really cool plays, high level college football player, and then just, doesn't even get like a chance in the league. And so one of those things where it's hard to make sense of for me with that stuff.
I equate it to Miami with Mike McDaniel and Tua, but like even more, right? Because in college, the hashes are wider, so there's just more space to operate with to the field. The RPO rules are different. Like, linemen can get 3 yards down the field, so it completely screws with defenses. It's a different sport, and Lane leans into that. Like, that is his world. Like, we are going to RPO you to death. They called it 24% of the time. That's a hell of a lot. Like, nobody in the NFL does RPOs 24% of the time, even Miami. But I equate it to Miami in the sense that, okay, when you have Tyreek and you have Waddle and there's just so much space created, with the little shit and sharp motions, it's what they call it, not us, but it's what they call it. And Tua racks up these crazy numbers, and you're like, some of this is really tough to give the credit to Tua, but at the same time, he's the one pulling the trigger. He's the one making the correct decisions. He's the one reading the space correctly and putting the ball where it needs to be. Like, I feel like Dart deserves credit for operating the offense just like Tua operates Miami when everything works right in Miami for the first 6 weeks of the season. But I also don't know what to do with that, right? Because how many offenses in the NFL are going to be like that? None of them. And maybe the one that comes closest already has their Tua. So again, it's almost like a similar thing with Shedeur. Like, where do you draw the line? Or rather, how big is that gray area where you're like, yeah, but a good throw is a good throw, even if it's in a system that just doesn't really look like an NFL offense. The Tennessee guys go through this too because of all the Art Briles DNA in there. It's like, where do you draw the line between the production is fake and, well, it's a good ball?
Well, I think I like Tua way more than you guys like Tua. I would say, if I was making the argument with the differences between the RPO game, when you turn on Ole Miss RPOs, they're access hitches. And I mean, they're everywhere. They're like sprinkled on damn near every other play. Where when I think of Miami Tua RPOs, I'm thinking anticipation in breakers where he's more, they've got second level, third level implications with multiple kind of space options. And not to say that all of them are like that, but it's just a more sophisticated version of it. Now, there's I guess he could do it. And, you see some teams do it. I think Texas does a little bit more of those types of RPOs with Sark.
Clemson, too. they'll pop it out. Yeah.
But it's one of those things for me. Like when the Jaxson Dart stuff, we're trying to talk ourselves into why he's going to have this opportunity on Sundays, and there just aren't a lot of Sunday throws, man. And I mean, and that's you could say that about damn near every guy here in this class. But then the part that I think is frustrating with the Jaxson Dart part is that we talked earlier about Cam Ward being able to say like he makes some bad plays, but he bounces back, like he comes right back away. Where if you watch the end of the Florida game, with
Oh
Ole Miss,
God, brutal!
bro, it will scar you for life. It will scar you for life. It's bad statistically, and then you turn on the film and you're like, oh no, it's way worse. It's crazy.
It's the perfect segue. I deeply appreciate that you brought it up, because as we're talking about this mesh between system and what the system's worth and what it creates and the player and what they create, with Jaxson Dart, I'm always flipping it to the other side with all players, not just Dart, but like, what are the reasons, like you said, JT, that he can be good on Sunday, and what are the reasons that he can't? What are his liabilities right now? And when the offense worked at Ole Miss and he was in rhythm throws are solid for him. Slants are money. He has a nice touch over the top. If it's the primary read, he's really good. If the pocket's clean, he's really good. If it's primary read and the pocket's clean, he's great. But the further you go into the reads, the worse it gets. The muddier the pocket gets, the worse the results get. As it starts to break down, it really breaks down. And then he is streaky in the way that when he's good, and he gets several good throws strung together in a row. And then when the wheels come off and he starts to press and things start to fall apart, a la the Florida game, it gets really bad. And it's like throw after throw. He kind of throws, good money at bad throughout the end of that game. And you're like, oh, okay, you just stop, do something else. Like get him a rhythm throw, get him some run game, get him something, because we got to get him off this particular streak. And that worries me at the projection to the next level, because things aren't going to be clean. Things are going to be muddy. You're going to get pressure more often. Your first read's going to be open less. And those are all the things he does great right now. Not to say he can't get better as the play progresses, but right now on film, it's not good. When it starts to go downhill, it goes downhill in a hurry. One thing I did want to say that I was surprised by, in addition to the arm was just different, is he's tough as hell. Like, he got mashed in the Georgia game. Like, he could hardly walk. He probably took a shot. He came back, and he was running in that game later on. And they got whooped in the game, but, like, he was out there and got smashed multiple times after that and kept getting up for his guys. Like, I was like, okay, that's a different level, because you were already pretty well hurt. It was early on. It was like late first quarter, early second. And he was out there, they had the backup in for like, I don't know, 5 plays, 8 plays, 10 plays, something. And he came back, played the rest of the game, and you could tell he was crushed and kept getting crushed and kept getting up. And if you could do that in the SEC, there's that fiber you need from a starting quarterback.
So what you're saying is he is a New York Giant. He just doesn't know it yet.
Oh, man. I don't know. I think Dable could scheme up some immediate reads for him that would be fun. And, like, sure, I want to see him, bomb the ball down to Malik Neighbors. I think that could be cool too. But boy, when things break down, I'm not sure the Giants fans would love it in year one. Let's put it that way.
JT, are you okay with him going in the first round, like some people are speculating? Or are you day 2, or dare I even say early day 3 type of guy where we're going to take him? He's a lotto ticket. We'll see what's there, but it's just too hard to translate to make me think like I can spend a top 100 pick on this and feel okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would not feel comfortable saying that if I was a GM, I would not feel comfortable drafting him in the first round. Doesn't mean he won't go in the first round. I just, to your point, you guys are so nice about it. I just feel like there's so much fucking schemed up, bro. There's just so much schemed up for him to be successful, and to say, oh, he doesn't do great when it's not there. Every other, most plays in the league are going to be muddy throws, and when every muddy throw is a borderline disaster, it makes you nervous. And yeah, he playing in the NFL light conference certainly helps, and that part of it I totally get. But man, I would just watching the film, I would just be on the phone with Lane saying, hey, can we, you want to come back to the league type of thing, more than I would be like, hey, with anything
it's a package
else.
deal. I need you both. I can't take one.
Yeah,
It is kind of wild that he hasn't gotten an NFL job again, because I feel like over the last 10 years, and I know that the the 10 to 15 year ago Lane experience wasn't the best, but he was also a young coach and he's grown a lot since then. But like, you look at what he does as a schemer, and it's like, how is no NFL owner throwing like $15 million a year at him? Because they could outbid Ole Miss, like they could, and maybe he just likes it there. I don't know.
I was gonna
But
say, might
like,
be happy with
there's
the confines.
how many NFL head coaches right now do you think you would immediately, if you had the opportunity to, replace with Lane Kiffin? It's at least 5 for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just get so sensitive about dealing with, personalities. And I don't think Lane and I necessarily would be buddies, but like I certainly appreciate someone that is that good at their job. And when you turn on the film fucking for years now, and it has been this, where you're just like, man, no, he's on the cutting edge of how to scheme people open at college football. And there's no reason why it wouldn't translate the same, because you've already alluded to it's a different game. But there are things that the creativity doesn't go away. They're just the ways that you're able to do it won't be as significant, and there won't be huge schemed open a la carte touchdowns every single week. But that part of it I've always thought, this is a totally side conversation, side tangent, but in the league there are so few opportunities for competitive advantages. There really are, intentionally, right? With a bunch of different cap things and all those types of things. And the coaching part of it, to me, is always an untapped resource for owners that they've never really fully, what I think, invested in and developed to be able to take advantage of competitive advantages. And Lane feels like you just got to get past the fucking visor and all the everything that comes with it. Maybe a little immaturity or whatever however you want to classify it, whatever his vibe is. It's not even immaturity. It's just not my vibe. So his vibe, just to lean into that, to take all the great that he is scheme wise, it drives me crazy. And it's awesome for Ole Miss, man. If I was a quarterback coming out, and you get a chance to play for a play caller, I mean, you got to be excited to go play offense there.
I would, like, if I was in the portal, like, yes, NIL matters, but if the money was equal between Ole Miss and, say, Ohio State, and I'm an offensive player, like, I'm going to go to Ole Miss, because they're going to improve my draft stock even more than Ohio State would, because I'm going to produce. I'm going to get numbers. And that's saying a lot, because Ohio State is national champion and one of the best programs in the country. And I still think Lane Kiffin, like, if I was a young player, and a young offensive, like, skill player or quarterback, I still think Lane Kiffin would make me more money as far as where I'm going to get drafted than any other team in the country. And that says a lot. By the way, good transition to Will Howard, who went to Ohio State and made a lot of money. Maybe not as much as Jaxson Dart did, but still made a lot of money. Probably going to go fairly early in the draft. I would assume somewhere on day 2, because he's big, he has tools, he has arm talent, he's tough. He went on like this Linsanity run in the last month of the season, which matters a lot. Overall, high level, where are you at on Will Howard?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not as high as that lead into. I think he certainly played some outstanding football down the stretch there. I feel like this is another thing. Like, I love Chip Kelly as a play caller. Like, I think he has been elite in the run game for years. And I don't know if it's under the radar. I think people who watch ball know that. But what they're able to do, what he was able to do to put him in a situation to make him successful and lean into his strengths, to be as far as being a big guy, the Q run game. You turn on, I forget even which game it was, but I swear he ran Q power like fucking 10 times. And it was just one of those things where, you're certainly not going to do that in the league, but his ability to get in there, playing big games when it matters most, play your best ball. I always think that's one of the things that kind of goes understated in the quarterback eval world, is you want the capacity to elevate the huddle or elevate the system, elevate the program that you go into. And one of those things where I think Will Howard, jumps off with that. I think he's good at protecting the ball. You see a little bit of anticipation. But again, to your point, to our earlier point about the guys throwing it, there's just not a lot of precision in his capacity to throw it. And it kind of stings me, because I know one of the backups a little bit with Julian Sayin at Ohio State, and he is the antithesis of that. Like, the dude is a jugs machine. And so it must have just infuriated the wide receivers to be able to have this guy throwing the scout team, throwing fucking lasers, and having this other big guy who's running it, who's operating at a high level, who got paid to transfer to come in there to do it. And they won, and it's great. But I'm more interested to see Ohio State moving forward than I maybe was watching them on offense this year.
Yeah, Howard's a fascinating one. We got to be on the field at the combine, and his combine was atrocious. And it's just testing, but we were right there, and he was getting booed, and it was getting worse. It definitely sort of got to
That's
him.
why I'm not sure it's just testing, because you saw him get worse as the boos got louder.
Yeah.
And that was my main takeaway from the combine, which is if he's struggling with combine boos,
Yep.
because it's Big Ten fans there and everything like that. If he's struggling with combine boos and he's spraying the ball all over the place, like what's going to happen when he's on the road in Philly in a night game?
Yeah. No, it stuck with me for that reason, which is like this is throwing against air. I get he's, not throwing to his guys and whatever else, but I'm not willing to make huge leaps because of that. When I went to the tape, I liked it better than I thought I would with all that going in, because JT had a very similar opinion of, again, the sort of flash that I've seen is like, well, he's, look, he's tall, he's got a big arm, he can spin it, like he's going to be popular. But I think the misses that I saw stuck with me more. And again, that's the thing. When you sit down and watch an entire game, and then you watch another one, and then you watch another one, you get a much more sort of holistic sense of how often those things happen, whether they're hits or misses. And I came away feeling like the level of Will Howard's game was slightly higher than I thought it was going in. That doesn't mean that I'm, I don't like the misses, especially the deep sideline ball. Like, that's just a throw I really like. It's a throw you have to throw in the league. And the deep sideline ball with him it's the nicest way to say it is not consistent. And we saw that in testing, and we saw that even down the stretch. Sometimes he's got a guy open. A lot of times he's got a guy open. It's Ohio State. They got a lot of good wide receivers, and he just throws it 3 yards over his head. It's foul ball. And that stuff drives me nuts, those missed chunks that he can hit because you've seen the arm. It's very good. He'll hit it on another play. He'll hit it with a little bit of anticipation, and you're like, aha. And then, he gets another chance at that. The underneath stuff I thought was better. And the complement of the quarterback run game that he brings is different than a Jalen Milroe. It's different than these other guys in the fact that he has size. He can run it with power. He's a sneak weapon, but not just a sneak weapon. He was more mobile than I thought he was when I saw him on film, whether it was running or rolling out. And those are all tools, again, that are going to help him. So I liked him better than I thought I would, which was surprising to me when I, again, took the multiple game samples. The testing thing still sticks in my craw a little bit. I don't love it. And the deep sideline ball definitely sticks in my craw. I don't love that. But there's a lot to work with there. Again, if we're talking about positives in terms of that size. And again, he had very clean pockets. 3 of his guys are getting drafted on the offensive line this year. The rest of them probably next year. So he had a lot of clean pockets, but even in a muddier pocket, he's big, he's strong, he's got that base. He can get out of pressure when he gets, guys around his feet and tangled up. He looks a little bit better there than some of the other quarterbacks do. Plays through pressure fairly well. Some of the other guys in his class, we talked about Jaxson Dart, we talked about Shedeur. Both of them sort of, their game crumbles a lot with pressure. Howard was able to make some of those plays through pressure, which I like and appreciate, and any rookie quarterback's going to have to do. So there was more there to like, but I think, again, we can take any one thing, whether it's a game, a highlight, a piece of testing, a measurement, and really put too much emphasis on it. And I probably did that coming away from the combine, because coming away from the combine, I was not a Will Howard fan. I was like, nope, not for me. And when I went back to tape, I went, well, there's actually more here for me than I thought there was.
JT, if you had to ascribe a superpower to Will Howard, does he have one?
I mean, I think he would probably, I don't know him at all, but I would imagine watching his game, you would want to say winning, playing winning football. He's got a little Jalen Hurts vibe to it. He's probably not as good of a passer. Although I remember Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma thinking he was not a great passer either. And so it's one of those things where, the way that I thought of it was that the first guy was so open that when it wasn't open, it almost looked like a one and run type of mindset that I think is really hard to be successful in the league for anybody to be able to live in that world. And so, to be able to get to do, like most of these guys, you're going to have to develop as a thrower, going to have to develop as a guy who can deliver the ball consistently from the pocket on a more consistent basis, as opposed to, for me, when I see him throw, it looks like it comes out a little nose down, a little sinker-ish. The combine throwing thing to me is I feel a little bit on both sides, because if you don't know, like, the excuse you're not throwing to your guys is not as weird to me as, hey man, sometimes you get a fucking slick ass ball. You never, if you don't know what you're dealing with, like with the ball, with those things in a different environment, is it cold in there? Like, it's just it is weird. Now, for a guy who's at Ohio State to have that experience is probably a little bit different than a guy like who went to Division II, who never, those types of things that I remember throwing. But the other part I can remember about the combine is that the dudes that can throw. Like, if you can, I always think back to that Moneyball line where,
such a good thrower, why doesn't he throw good?
Yeah, such a good hitter, why doesn't he hit? And so it's one of those things where, like, that's a problem, right? Like, we're we can make all the excuses we want. If you can't throw it, there aren't a lot of guys who play quarterback in the league who don't throw it well. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where it's going to have to get better, but it doesn't mean he's not going to get a shot to to earn a roster spot and develop and get his opportunity at some point.
The thing that was really weird to me about Will Howard, right? Because, as EJ mentioned, at least for half the season, you had 3 NFL starting offensive linemen there. 2 of them got hurt, fine, but it's still Ohio State, still got dudes on the offensive line. You got Jeremiah Smith, who might go first overall next year because he's that good a prospect, or in 2 years whenever he comes out. And you got Emeka Egbuka, who's a top, let's just say at minimum top 50 pick, right? You got 2 NFL running backs. And EJ brought up, okay, the deep sideline shots were spray and pray, which they were. He only had 30 of them the entire year. And they played 15, 16 games. So we're talking like, 2 a week? Despite having Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka and an offensive lineman full of NFL pros that, like, you can take shots down the field if you want to. And yes, I understand they still won a bunch of games and they won the Natty. It all worked out in the end. Don't you think it's kind of odd that when you have that much NFL talent that can win on the perimeter almost at will, they just didn't do it? Do you think that they were almost kind of telling us something without telling us something, that like 2 a game when you got Jeremiah Smith? It's just weird to me. Is it not to you guys?
It is to me as well. And kind of the same thing as when I think of like Jalen Milroe throwing it a little bit, as far as like there are things where you see like maybe trust issues about what we're asking the quarterback to do from a game plan perspective, to be able to trust to deliver the ball where he's supposed to be consistently. And, the only one that I really remember off the top of my head, I think it was the championship game in the second half where he missed a double move down the left sideline where it felt like you could have punted it to him. And it's one of those things where, as a play caller, man, you would go bananas. Like, I mean, it was, in I guess at Ohio State, you talked about why you should throw those balls. I would almost say that your framing would lean into why you don't have to throw those balls. If you're just can beat the shit out of everybody at the line of scrimmage and you're better at every person, you're better at every position than your opponent. It's one of those things where, well, let's just play it safe, be smart about it, and not put it in, even though it might not be harm's way to us, it's probably harm's way to the play caller to say we're going to just chuck up a ball with a guy who doesn't throw it that well down the field.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that assessment. And to your point about it comes out nose down, I made a note and I just found it, misses low on deep comeback throws, like pretty consistently, not all the time, but like that he just does have for a guy that is so tall and throws mostly over the top and can really spin it when he's on. That was something I saw, and it's like I don't know if it's your targeting computer or it's the way you're letting go of that ball, but you missed low on a bunch of deep comeback throws, enough that I made a note about it as it being fairly consistent. And I think it is about limiting those opportunities for bad things to happen, which is a weird place to be when you are better across the board at every position, you'd be thinking, hey, let's just go, let's gun it. Let's maximize those opportunities. And you also said, like, when his first read was open, I put, can lock on to his primary reads, and he does. And a lot of times that's because it was open and he could hit it. And you do see, again, a very few examples on tape where he works through progressions. He can do it, but he just doesn't do it very often. And again, that muscle is going to have to get much more developed in the NFL, because your primary read is not just going to be there and clean and open on, 75 or 80% of your plays. And, I'm not quite sure it was that high at Ohio State, but it's higher than it's going to be in the league by far. And you're going to have to be better and quicker at that, and you're going to have to miss less, and that's moving 2 sliders in opposite directions. So he's got work to do, but you've seen it. Tools are there. Like, there's some coach out there, I guarantee, is going to look at that and say, I can work with that.
Last quarterback we're going to touch on today is one of the only quarterbacks that threw less deep outside the numbers shots the entire year than Will Howard. That's Dillon Gabriel. There's reasons for that. Right. I don't necessarily think he has great arm talent. And also, even though Oregon has some fast receivers, they're not necessarily like ball winners in 50-50 situations. So, like, I understand it from that standpoint. But at the same time, I think, if you're drafting these guys, again, for their superpower, Dillon Gabriel's superpower is not pushing the ball down the field. It's kind of being a point guard in the short to intermediate ranges. And I remember, when we were at Elite 11 with you last summer, and Dillon went through his throwing session. And I mean, the first thing that struck me was, wow, he's small. The second thing that struck me was, wow, he throws a really catchable football. And so the question I have for you, JT, is, okay, even though at Oregon, they didn't really push the ball deep and outside the numbers and, kind of take advantage of those one-on-ones that you get out there. We're talking about less than half the rate of Shedeur and Cam as far as throwing those one-on-ones. Do you care that much when you have a quarterback that is also so good at just being an on-time, rhythm, accurate thrower in the short to intermediate area?
I mean, I care. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I was disappointed in the film. And that's coming from a place where at the Elite, seeing him throw at the Elite 11, I was impressed with his ability to throw it. I thought he looked certainly as good as anybody, maybe as good as anybody I've ever seen do the rail challenge thing that they do, where you're essentially throwing that whole shot.
Oh, I mean, it's beautiful.
He won it easily and basically just gave it to the high school kid for fun. And it was one of those things where he was putting it on a string, and it was very impressive. And to your point, he's not a tall guy, but he's a thick guy. Like, he's not a, as opposed to like a Bryce Young undersized guy. He's a thick dude. And when you turn on the film, or when I turned on the film, I didn't see damn near any throws that I was like, oh yeah, this is taking advantage of what I thought his arm looked like at that, seeing him throw in person. And it was just super frustrating. And then you're kind of hedging it by saying, oh, well, he's a distributor, a point guard. He didn't look that great at the line of scrimmage throwing, he's skipping bubbles, and he's not as precise as opposed to a guy like Cam Ward, who to me was throwing like balls on a string on that kind of screen world throws, like a Bo Nix type elite ball placement. To Dillon Gabriel looked like, he was almost like thinking about it, almost like a guy who like can't throw strikes. And it's one of those things where it was just bizarre film. And it's weird because that offense is a very unique and college-y offense. They formation fuck you. They use all these different motions, and they use their perimeter quickness, I would say, as opposed to like down the field speed to attack you horizontally. And it's just one of those things where he never really got the opportunity to drive the ball down the field, to your point. And it's one of those things, again, is it because he can't do it? Because I've seen him throw in, we've seen him throw in person, and I would say he absolutely can drive the ball, but they didn't. And so it's one of those things where I was frustrated for him, and that there just weren't very many Sunday throws in his film. And to be honest with you, I was disappointed, because I went in there thinking like, oh, I really, really am excited to turn on this All 22. And then you watch it and you're like, I mean, it's a cool scheme, but like,
he's
come
okay.
on, Dillon. Like, come on, dog.
Yeah.
Like all it was tough. It was tough.
EJ, I know you saw him at the Oregon Pro Day recently,
Yeah.
and you also kind of came away thinking, I don't know about this.
Well, again, I've seen him, 3 times live now. They were all testing environments, right? Elite 11 is it's a competition. It's not a game. Saw him at the combine and saw him at the Oregon Pro Day. And, there's a lot of people out there that say he has a great arm or a good enough arm, because arm is definitely one of the first things that people bring up, because he is a bit shorter and you didn't see a lot of it, to your point, JT, on the film. And super ironically, when people want to show you that, they show you the 2 throws versus Ohio State down the sideline, right, that he made in that one game. And both of them, I love talking about those throws, because it has to be perfect for Dillon to get it down the field. He is a thick guy, but that real challenge, you'll remember, JT, was at 25, 30, 32 yards worth of depth. And at that depth, he can drive it. He was absolutely putting on a line, and it was super accurate. As he gets this is my theory at least, right? As he gets right outside that envelope, it drops off pretty precipitously. And he can push the ball down the field, but everything has to be perfect. And if you're standing right next to him when he's doing it, he is absolutely winding up and hucking it. And he has to get everything lined up. And it's the same thing with the accuracy. You said you were looking at more accuracy in the short game, and so was I. The accuracy is pretty good on most throws, but when it falters is when his top and his bottom half don't work together. When he is not coordinated from a base and throwing standpoint, it starts to fall apart. It's the same thing with the deep ball. If he has to step into a rush, he doesn't have any power. He can't get it up and over. If he doesn't have space around his feet, he can't throw it off platform 40 yards. It's not possible for him to do it physically. Those big long throws you see against Ohio State, he's got a clean pocket, he steps into it, and he absolutely just unwinds and snaps it. Now, that's cool, but again, how often is that going to happen in the league? How often is he going to have all of those things line up and then basically kind of just barely be able to make it? If you look at throws outside that 35-yard range, he holds up a lot of the receivers when they did take deep shots. They had to slow up. They had to come back. They had to jump and sort of make it into a back shoulder down the middle of the field. That stuff doesn't fly in the NFL. You're not probably going to make it through contact at the catch at that point. And if you do, you're not getting any yards afterwards. If the guy's out there, you got to hit him. You got to put it out in front of him and let him run to it.
I don't know, man. Baltimore has gone on several playoff runs in the Joe Flacco era with underthrown go balls.
Yeah, right.
If you want DPI, you draft Dillon Gabriel, baby.
No, that's your strategy. I'm going to bring in Dillon. We're going to get automatic offense from the yellow flag. It would work, but in terms of places he could go to be successful, to kind of turn this to the positive, I would love to see him as a backup in Miami, right? Because can he do all the Tua things? I don't think he can. Can he do 80% of the Tua things? And is that better than most backups in that system? Yeah, I think that would be fine. And I think Mike would understand a lot of the things and probably pull the throws out that he's not going to be as good at. Tua throws a better deep ball than Dillon. It's not really close. So you're just going to run a few less that week. But all the underneath stuff in terms of timing, I think he can do when he is comfortable. And it's a smaller envelope, which means I'm not picking Dillon Gabriel as a potential starter for me in the NFL. Very good college quarterback. Obviously took his team on a great run this year. But when you look at those translatable skills, when you look at those translatable throws, there was less on the tape for the NFL than I thought there might be. I was with you in that area, JT, of turn on and go, well, that's neat, but he's going to have to do this, this, and this, and I'm not sure that he can.
JT, if you had a destination in mind for somebody of his skill set, I mean, A, do you have one? And B, about where would you start thinking about drafting a Dillon Gabriel? I assume it's day 3, right?
Yeah, I think he's a mid-round guy. The way that the things that you just don't see on there. The other things that I saw that, and maybe it's just because of his number, right? Does he rock 8 at Oregon, and he's lefty. Yeah. To me, and this is going to come across as a serious knock, although it's really not. He kind of has poor man Steve Young vibes. That's dating me, but I think of Steve Young as a elite athlete back in the day. Could run it, use his legs.
Could have been a running back. Yeah.
Yeah. And then not necessarily a massive arm guy, but I always think of him as very accurate. Like in the West Coast world was, on a string, super precise. He just kind of has that body movement, but Steve was a thick, good athlete, those types of things. I don't think it's fair to compare him to to say he's going to be a Hall of Famer type guy, but like that's what I wanted to see. And it just wasn't there. And the other part that was frustrating about the film part, when you guys were talking about, capping his ability to drive the ball deep down the field. The other part that I felt like, as opposed to more than almost anybody else we've talked about, he had what I would classify as turn downs or potential misses more than almost anybody else. And it's kind of a weirder college stat or college idea, because so much of college football to me is more scheme stuff, as opposed to in the league. It's a little bit more like progression centric, where you can kind of see the bones of a progression, where sometimes in college they'll be like, oh, we're going to deal up this like little special middle field open beater type shit.
It's all snapshot stuff.
Yeah. Where Dillon would have his feet looking at like a seam or like a specialty kind of inbreaker, and it would be there on that time, and he just wouldn't throw it. And so part of it to me was like a vision thing. And those types of things are really scary to me, because those are types of things where if you can't see it at that level, it's going to look like you're on a freeway, at the NFL level. And it's just going to be very difficult to make sense of stuff down the field, which would really scare me. And it was just one of those things where the nicest way I can put it was I was just disappointed with the film and bummed out. I think he certainly could go on, and I don't think it's a huge knock to say he's got some Tua vibes to it like that regard. But again, I put Tua at an elite level of anticipation and being able to distribute the ball, where that's just not what they did at Oregon. And so it's just one of those things where, hopefully he falls into a spot that allows him to develop, and he continues to work on those types of things that we've said about kind of finding the ceiling of his ability to throw the ball.
Tua gets brought up a lot with this quarterback class, because I think a lot of people, Shough, we brought him up a lot today. A lot of people compare the skill sets of the quarterbacks in this class to Tua, and I think it's just because of what a lot of their offenses look like, right? And I want to finish on Quinn Ewers, because he's another one who gets brought up in the Tua discourse a lot. But I also think Tua, just like with all these other guys, is a better version of it. And you tweeted recently that you can't get the first quarter of the 2022 Alabama game out of your head when talking about Quinn. So I was at that game. I was in like the 10th row. Nice. It was me and Bengal. And I remember seeing the stadium not just believe that they were going to win, but they believed they were about to beat the shit out of Bama in that game. And they probably were before Quinn got hurt, because that first half was incredible. And of course, Bama came back. Bryce Young did Bryce Young things in the fourth quarter. Like, we know how that game ended. But I remember sitting there watching Quinn going like, God, that looks like a future top 10 pick. So I was right there with you. And like, I saw the arm live in that game. It looked awesome. And I've been waiting for that to come back for 2 years. And it just hasn't. Like, I don't know, what his entire injury history is. But I've watched him throw live, and obviously a lot on tape since then. I still don't feel like his arm has ever looked that live ever again. I think the pocket presence has gone backwards. Like, some of the sacks he took against Georgia, like Kelvin Banks was throwing his hands up like, what are you doing? Like, get out of the way. I think his pocket presence is worse. I think his arm talent is worse. For whatever reason, like, he just doesn't drive the ball ever. And I don't know if it's because he can't or what, but like, just every throw, even the ones down the field, it's just, I am putting air on it, and I hope my guy adjusts to it. Like, Matthew Golden bailed his ass out a lot this year. And I went from legitimately being so impressed with Quinn Ewers that I was like, that's a top 10 pick, to now 2 years later saying that's a 5th round pick. And I can't recall the last time I have soured on a guy so much over the course of a 2-year period when his team was so successful. And so I want to get your thoughts on Quinn Ewers, and I want to also empathize with you not being able to get that first quarter out of your head, because I still hang on to that too. Even as somebody who is lower on Quinn, I know it's in there. but I just haven't seen it in so long.
Yeah, man, that is absolutely how I feel about it. I don't know. I wouldn't even say top 10. I would go so far as to say that dude is the dude whenever he decides to come out, if you keep playing at the level that he played at that game. Now, again, I know it's a long time ago. And the injury thing to me, I'm just not that kind of doctor. Like it would be, I remember going to the combine, going to the medical part of it. And I was one of those guys where I said I had no college injuries. I was going in there saying I have nothing. And I was around other guys in line that it looked like they brought like a novel with them with their histories. And I just could not imagine following him at the combine at the medical examination part, because it would just, it's hard to make sense of. And you just don't know, but you can look at the guy and say, that's not the same. What we saw in film driving the ball is just not the same as this sample size. And it came up a couple other times, but it certainly wasn't anywhere near consistent. And it's one of those things where it will forever be frustrating to me, because I really do. I got so excited about that game in that moment that it was one of those things where it will always stick with me. But to your point about not being able to drive the ball now, I would go so far as to say every time he tried to throw the ball down the field, it looked like there was like a gust of wind that hit the ball. Like it was weird. And it was one of those things where even if you want to put the best kind of dressing around it and say, hey, I don't even remember what game it was. It was in the playoff where he changed the play at the line of scrimmage. I think it was in overtime, and they hit like a zero beater down the middle of the field, and it was outstanding. But the ball still looked like it was fighting itself to get there. And it's just one of those things where it is hard to make sense of. I can tell you, I was around a number of guys. This is anecdotal, but I was around a number of guys who, for some reason, had a significant injury. And granted, this is a long time ago, but when guys are never the same after their injury, it's just it's tough, man. It's just not everybody heals the same. Not everybody, the accumulation of different injuries, what types of injuries. It's just one of those things where I was around. The example I was given, I would tell it to Carson if I was around him. But Carson Palmer, I was around as a young guy, and he was one of the best throwers I've ever seen throw the ball. And then I was around him coming off an injury, and he just wasn't the same for a year. And it took a time. Now, this has been multiple years, and that's why I think it's probably more concerning than anything else. But, I'd be lying too if I told you if I was involved in an NFL organization and we were thinking about taking a day 3 guy and Quinn Ewers is available and we feel decent about his medical history or what we can do to build it back or do whatever that is, I would be pretty excited to get an opportunity to see what he can do, because there just aren't other guys that have that film at any level. There just aren't. And so that part of it is just hard to make sense of. And honestly, I kind of feel and empathize with the guy, because you got to be killing yourself to say, hey, I was at this level and now I'm at this level coming into the league. It's got to be crazy frustrating.
Yeah, build it back is the phrase that you use that really rings in my ear with him, because again, we saw him operate and everybody saw the film even when he was coming out of high school, right? And he could absolutely spin it. Weird arm angle, but he could rip it in a way that very few guys could. And again, early successes, and everybody thinks progression is linear, that it's just going to keep going up, right? You got this good, well, now you're just going to get better. Things happen. Injuries, coaching changes, whatever else. But what makes it even tougher or more heartbreaking about Ewers is he's got every opportunity, right? It lasts 5-6 receivers he's worked with are all in the NFL. He's got Sark calling plays. He's got linemen who are protecting him, who are going to be top round picks. Like, he's got every possible opportunity to play really, really well. And for 2 years, for the most part, we haven't seen it hardly at all, even though the team was successful. And I think it's sort of in spite of that. Talked to many people this year that said, man, I think if they play Arch Manning, right? Sean King said it the other day. I think if they play Arch Manning this year, they win the Natty. And I don't think that's a stretch. And that's got to be so tough to hear. So when you talk about build it back, I think about the mental side more than anything else. That guy needs a complete sort of mental rebuild of like confidence and where you are now. And if he's going to get back to any height of playing football, in anger, it feels like it's got to get stripped down to the base and start over again, because he's not where he was. And that does have to be so frustrating. I used to be able to do this and now I can't for whatever reason. there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of talent, but I think any coaching staff that goes out and picks Quinn Ewers has got to know that they're starting like over again in a lot of ways, that we're going to build this up in our system. We're going to build the body. We're going to build the confidence, and they have to be very confident in that approach. And if they're not, and boy, that patience is hard to find in the NFL, you know that. So it's just a really tough spot that he finds himself in. As you were at the absolute peak of the sport at one point. You're not right now, and you have to be honest about that, or you've got no shot.
As you were talking, one team kept flashing in my mind, and that was the Rams.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of
same thing they did with Baker.
Yeah. And like they take chances on players that I don't want to say are down and out, but that are going through a dip, or they're trying to rebuild themselves or reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
And Sean McVay is not just a great schemer, but he is such a good developer of people, right? And reinstilling confidence. And, you know, he doesn't teach every single player the same way. Like he is an elite teacher in the sense that he adjusts how he teaches for the guy that he's talking to. And I think the best possible thing for Quinn would be to go to a coach like Sean McVay that can develop him not just as a quarterback, but also kind of just build him back as a human being who clearly I think was kind of going through it this past year with all the calls for Arch and everything like that. And like, I'll be honest, like I contributed, like I tweeted out, like, I think they'd be better with Arch, and it was probably true, but you know, that's my job, is to talk about the football. It's Sean's job to get Quinn into a mental space where that doesn't affect him like I think it affected him last year at Texas. JT, the question I have for you, have you ever been around a coach like that who is just as good of a people person as he is a schemer? And what kind of effect did that have on you as a player to be around that type of coach?
I don't know if I'd put it quite like that, but I definitely was around guys in the league that I felt cared more about me as a human, or as much about me as a human as I was a football player. And I certainly feel like that's a better relationship, or I appreciated that more as the student element of being coached by someone that I know cared about my development. Like, yes, we're trying to win every Sunday. We're trying to get better every practice, but also cares about my long-term, you know, becoming a better human being, making sure that I'm in the right spot to compete, making sure that I feel like I'm being told the truth. You know, part of it is just being told the fucking truth in the league, where you don't really ever get a real opportunity unless someone believes in you and wants you to have that opportunity. And so it's one of those things, you know, I don't know if I would break it down so much as much as you guys have, as far as he needs to be rebuilt from the ground up type of thing. I think of it as, if I was in the Ewers camp, I would be like, bro, you've already dealt with significant adversity. Like, really, I mean, you've got the opportunity now. Everybody's got a good opportunity, but you've got the opportunity to go into a more chill situation in the NFL, where you can hopefully get an opportunity to develop and lean into that development to get you. I would just be nervous about, bro, can you get healthy? Like, what is
Right.
Is the healthy a thing? Because if the healthy is not a thing, you know, that's such a huge bummer, and that happens to many people. That's just not a thing. But if you can lean into getting healthy and be in a spot where, to your point, it's a, you know, let's just say, use McVay as the analogy as far as being able to be developed holistically, you know, you it's probably going to be easier. Might not be playing with as talented of guys on the perimeter compared to your opponents, but that's many people in the league. That's many people going from college football to the league. And so it's one of those things where I would just be, I would feel it would be refreshing for him to just say, all right, I don't have to deal with any of that bullshit. I'm going in, I'm going to give myself 18 months to put my head down, grind. And then when I get my opportunity, if I can come out the other side looking like I did early, I've got a great opportunity to make a lot of money and play for a long time.
Well, we've done a casual 90 minutes here on the 2025 quarterback class. We appreciate all the time you gave us once again. It's one of our favorite annual traditions, where you come back and we pick your brain about all these guys. Any final thoughts on this class before you head out? And also, what do you have coming up on QB school?
I mean, the sweet irony is we're probably going to get like 3 Hall of Famers in this class.
You know it.
No, man, I'm just laying low, and the channel is all draft prep nowadays. But it'll be fun. I think you guys have had a little bit of access to the throwback game type of stuff that I'm going to kind of dive into a little bit more. Maybe do some old Super Bowls here as we get into this kind of like NFL lull time, and go catch some of maybe my favorite Peyton Manning games or things like that to dive into the archives to have fun with as we ramp it up. And shoot, it'll be fall before we know it.
You're going to have a blast with those 2005 Colts offenses where they're going under center and empty, because that's just what teams did back then for whatever reason. It's a good time. Good time. All right. Thanks, JT. We'll catch you soon.
All right. See you, fellas.
Well, as usual, we went for a very, very long time with JT. He's one of the guests that is very gracious with his time with us and is willing to go, an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours talking about quarterback play. I realized after we did not talk about Tyler Shough from Louisville, basically at all. I think he's kind of the only major quarterback prospect we didn't really touch on. Before we get out of here, EJ, do you have any top line thoughts about Shough that you just want to throw in here because it's the quarterback episode?
Sure. Tyler Shough is fascinating to watch. If you just watch the highlights, you would think he was a first-round pick. He can absolutely spin it, and that is intoxicating to NFL decision makers. When you dig in, there are a couple things that give me great pause. One is that he is already 25 and a half, and it has nothing to do with the contract. I just kind of want to jump on the mini soapbox and say age for me with quarterbacks, because quarterbacks are playing almost to 40 and past these days. It's not about contract value overall. It's about development, like physical development. Tyler Shough is a grown-ass man. He's going to be 26 in the next NFL season. If you're thinking he's going to change physically, you're probably not right. His arm might get a little bit stronger, but he pretty much is a finished product. When we're looking at a quarterback that's 21, 22, 23 years old, they've got some growing left to do physically, and of course, all quarterbacks can grow from the mental processing standpoint side. So it's not, he's 25 and you're not going to get him for a second or third contract. Dude, if you pick a quarterback and you get 5 or 6 good years out of him, you hit, it's fine. But the age is one thing because of that for me. The other one is the injuries. 3 major broken bones in the last 4 seasons. At some point, it's a pattern. And then there's this weird thing. We saw it at the combine, and I went, what is that? And then you go back to his tape, and it pops up once or twice a tape. And it's like his processor just sort of short circuits and resets. It's like turn it off and turn it back on. There's just a couple of plays every week, which he could afford in college, and you can afford a lot less in the NFL, where he just sort of blips out and you can't understand what he was doing or why he threw it there. And you just sort of go, ooh, and it sticks with you. And you go, if you see a couple of those throughout the season, like that's fine. If you see 5 or 6, it's all right. If you see 1 or 2 a week, it's a thing. It's not a bug, or maybe it is, but it's also a feature. Like it's there and it's part of the deal. And so you have those high level throws, accuracy, timing, bit of anticipations in there, which is great for a college quarterback. But then you have the age, the injuries, and this weird, I'm just going to call it a tick because I don't know what it is, but it shows up all the time and it worries me. So Shough's a little bit farther down my board. I understand why people that like him. I can't get past those 3 factors to really push him farther up my board.
It's the Will Levis gene, right? And we talked about it with Cam Ward, where it's like he'll just do something inexplicable and you're like, Tyler, what the hell are you doing? And it's not even just about decision making, like mechanically, like he will just randomly have these throws where his mechanics will go in the toilet for no reason. Like it's not like he's under pressure. Nope. You mentioned it at the combine, like he had a couple throws during the throwing session at the combine where like his mechanics they just didn't exist for like a couple throws, and obviously they went super errant, and we're like, why did he do that? Like, you're not even in pads. There's no pressure. Like, you're in the perfect weather-controlled environment, and he decided to just... I wouldn't even call it like a sidearm.
It's like he fell off the hanger for a minute. He just kind of goes, ugh. And you're like, what was that? He did it right in front of me. I'll send the video to the editors. We'll see if we can clip it in here. It's one throw, but it was just so odd that I was like, what's that? And then I couldn't unsee it when I went back to tape.
And to go back to the Will Levis, Cam Ward thing, again, the difference between Will Levis and Cam Ward, and I think the difference between Tyler Shough and Cam Ward, they both have very, very, very high highs, but when the low lows happen, I thought Cam Ward was much better at digging himself, or rather digging his team out of some of the holes that he created for them, whereas Shough was not. And that was also the downfall of Will Levis. Like, you're going to get the low lows with Will Levis, but even though he had some high highs, they didn't happen enough to make up for the low lows. At least with Cam Ward, the high highs happen more frequently than the low lows. So, like, you can live with it. I would even almost say it's like it's like no, Jameis isn't. I don't even think Jameis is the right comp either, because Jameis also had the high highs that would dig himself out of trouble, which is why he ended up with 30 and 30 in the same year. But just Shough, for whatever reason, like you mentioned, he just randomly turns his brain off. And I don't know why. And he's not good enough to overcome that on a down in, down out basis. Like, I just feel like he's very much a one step forward, two step back type quarterback, where at least Cam Ward is like one step back, two step forward, if that makes sense.
It does to me.
He just enrages me for that reason. He really does. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. Hopefully that was just kind of a sampler of Tyler Shough talk. I know we're going to talk about him a lot more when he inevitably gets drafted in like the second round this year, because he's got tools and everything like that. Even though I don't think he should go that high, I think he will go that high because he's a quarterback, and that's just what happens. So we'll kind of do a deeper dive into him when he comes off the board during the draft stream, which, by the way, the draft is very, very close to us now. So if you want to join us for every single pick of the draft, we are doing our annual live streams. No commercial breaks. It's like 17 hours over 3 days. We just go and go and go, and we cover every single pick for every single team. So if you're interested in that and you want a good second screen experience, so to speak, make sure to come back for that during all 3 days of the draft. We also have one more episode dropping between now and the draft. That's Matt Harmon coming out to talk about receivers. And we also have a bunch of bonus content over on the Patreon, where we go through value DTs and value linebackers and even more value receivers, because there's like 40 of them in this class. So check those out if you're a patron. If you're not a patron already, you can find that at the link in the description below, or at the QR code on the screen. And speaking of our wonderful patrons, thank you to all of our executive producers on Patreon for making this show possible. Fitzy, Connor, Eichen, Liam, and Mike. Appreciate you boys once again. EJ, I don't think I have anything else. Any closing thoughts from you?
Draft rankings. Annual draft rankings.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have those on Patreon, too.
They're going to start dropping every day from pretty much now on. So check for those. We will go through. We have 12 different position groups. We do not scout specialists. Sorry, kickers. But everybody else, we go at least the top 8 deep in each position. And usually, if it's a position like, I don't know, running back, DT, wide receiver this year, we'll probably do closer to 20, because there's just that many good players. So those will be dropping. Those are patron only, and check them out. It's not only rankings in terms of where they are in tier and relate to each other, but also short descriptions of why. So if you want to get a little bit deeper into some prospects, those will be up real soon.
All right. Thank you once again for watching and listening. Wherever you happen to be watching and listening, we'll see you again very soon for the Matt Harmon episode. And until then, later.